Oz, hey, how are you?
Golly, good. You're a totally different person since was it 6 months that we spoke ago?
Well, I do. We have a new person in the family. We have a new child, so
That's
it's close.
substantial.
Yeah.
I
Um,
mean, I've congratulated you already in person, but congratulations for the sake of the world knowing that
Thank you. Thank you.
you're
Yeah, I think I didn't expect I should have expected that it would lead to some distractions and welcome distractions, but I'm bummed that you and I haven't had a chance to record this in a while. But like you said, we saw each other in real life, and that was really nice.
that makes it all better. You also changed jobs during this.
I did. Yeah, I changed job. Oh, that was another reason we haven't recorded in a while. Changed jobs. I'm at a small startup now. It's great. Have a new baby. Saw you in person. That's my life update. My
That's your highlights. Yeah, seeing,
things
I'm
are
glad
still a
I cracked
mess.
into the top three.
Yeah, yeah. Things are still a mess. No new old computers in here, but I was very happy when your girls were here, and I was like, someone's finally going to be excited about using one of these vintage Macs. And we got After Dark to work after some keyboard trouble and swapping and everything. So that was a real highlight. This is the first time anyone's actually cared about playing with these computers, other than me.
Yeah, since they haven't like grown up seeing 3D graphics like or either in movies or in games, I think the After Dark's 2D graphics
Yeah.
of the 90s, it's still pretty cool, still pretty impressive.
How
Like
dumb of
there's just something about graphics. It's like anything on the screen like that you can get a robot to do. Actually, I was with Zach Lada,
yeah.
a couple of days ago, and have we spoken about Blot before? You know what Blot is?
Blot, B-L-O.
Blot.
No, I don't know that.
BLOT, yeah. It's fantastic. It's a pen plotter, which is basically like a programmable pen, like on a 2D plane.
Yeah.
And so and they built a system where you can write just any JavaScript and it'll render on the screen. And if you've got one of these physical blot devices, you can plug it in just with USB and just have it draw a picture, your picture, your parametric picture that you've written in JavaScript. And so we got that running. This is a Hackler project, I should say.
Yep. Hack Club.
The idea, if you're a high school student or you know a high schooler, then you can do a drawing in the Blot editor on the screen, and if it's cool, they will send you the pieces for the Blot device, the pen plotter,
Wow.
and you can assemble it and print out your thing. It's a very very good initiative. Um, but yeah, what I was going to say is that it's just so much fun for a kid to see a robot that can draw a picture.
Ah,
Where you can like do the coding, and we were like drawing triangles and stuff, right? It was
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
like anything super exciting, but it's like, oh, triangle and a rectangle. Can we draw a house?
It's
Of course
it's
we
like
can draw a house.
you would not think drawing a square could be so exciting because they've drawn many squares, but this is like the most amazing square of all time because a little robot arm's doing it.
Yeah, robot arms doing it. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
That's
Um,
that's unreal.
so I
I
love I love
I always
projects like
wanted
that.
when I was a kid, they had those spirograph things where you'd like put
Uh-huh.
in here and it would be connected to these gears. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but this feels way better because you can do other random stuff. I want to put a little pen plotter in here. Maybe I should talk to Zach because I've been looking at something like the Axie Draw type thing, but
Yeah.
that feels overly complicated for my skill level with graphics. So I feel like Blot is more up my alley.
Yeah. Blot's good. Everything's open source, so you could like
Okay,
theoretically, 3D print the pieces yourself, like the printed pieces, like source the other parts, construct it,
cool.
and run it. Um, or you can really encourage a teenager in your life to submit and get one. Um, but it's they're great. It's a
Yeah.
great project. They've got a bunch of other projects like this where it's like if you design a PCB, printed circuit board, and they'll print it for you.
Yeah.
There's another one where you can design a game and they will ship you the components of a game console that has your game like flashed to ROM to play. So you can like physically play your JavaScript game on this little
Yeah.
console. Um, yeah, it's just like really
But
fun stuff
are
to make.
they coming up with the JavaScript libraries to like play nicely with all this stuff? Or are they using like for the graphics P5 JS and stuff that's already out there? Or are they also making
In this case they came up with their own.
cool? That's amazing. Speaking of games, and this was tangentially related to graphics, I have this idea in my head, which is probably really dumb, which is I feel like it would be so nice to introduce video games in the order that they appeared. So like when they turn, at age 5, you can get an original Nintendo, and then you have to wait like 8 years before I introduce Super Nintendo. And then when they,
Yeah, I think you've pitched
yeah,
me on this before.
ah,
Yeah,
okay, it's not going to work.
yeah.
Probably because
Well,
of
I don't know.
YouTube.
I guess it's yeah, it depends on the kind of social context.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Good
just,
luck.
yeah, I'll try. I
I
think
read actually, sorry, I was going to say I read Sid Meier's autobiography recently. And
Civilization.
that's a
Yeah.
civilization. Yeah, it's a fantastic read. I mean, like any book that I've read by someone who's designed games has been fantastic, or like about someone who's designed games, like oh
Prince of
god,
Persia.
Masters of Doom,
Oh, Master
yeah,
of
the Prince
Doom.
of Persia journals
Yeah.
I recommend.
Yeah.
Prince of Persia journals are just fantastic. Master of Doom, really good. Um, yeah, and Sid Meier. I mean, this is a little bit quirkier, but it's still really interesting to see like the journey of a game designer, because there's like the technical component of how to make the game so like work with the available technology at the
Yeah.
time, like how to maximize what's at the cutting edge of consumer hardware.
Yeah.
But then also it needs to be fun. It needs to be a thing where you understand people enough that you make the game fun.
Yeah.
So the combination of that is always very interesting. And yeah, he'd shipped quite a few games, including successful games, before Civilization, maybe like 2 dozen or something from
Yeah.
memory. A lot of them were flight simulators. Um, but Civilization he describes as I think he said he took it home for Thanksgiving, and it just like happened to be what he was working on during that Thanksgiving. And then like his brother disappeared and showed up the next day or something, like eyes dazed, being
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Gotta
Yeah.
get more civilization." Um, so it's like it worked. It hooked him at a level that the
Okay.
previous games hadn't.
So did
And
he could tell maybe that it was going to be successful? I mean, not to say
yeah,
you.
yeah. It was like until then he didn't realize how good even his own games could be. Like he saw that that was the standard that
Yeah.
his subsequent games were going to be judged against. Very cool feeling. I mean, even vicariously as someone who builds stuff with software, thinking that like maybe one day someone will have that kind of reaction to something I built. But I think games hit it a little bit differently for people
There's this
like me.
voyeuristic, for me, there's a voyeuristic thing about these game design books where there's almost a complete obsession where it consumes your entire life. You're up all night, you're eating pizza and Diet Coke for 2 years straight. And like I
Yeah.
want to be that person. I don't really want to be that person, but I want to care about something enough that I would do that, which is why I'm
That's
reading.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, the indie game movie is very similar as well. It's
Yeah.
like I guess it's because it's a hit space business. Like, are these people going to make it or not? Did it work out or not? It's a very exciting thing to read.
There was a book, pretty popular mainstream book, Tomorrow, Tomorrow, Tomorrow. Did you read that one? It's
I
about,
did not, but I think
okay.
I can.
Yeah, it's of the same ilk. That's really cool.
Yeah, some people have called this competence porn, where it's like you just enjoy the feeling of someone being good at something.
Yeah.
But there's another kind of experience here as well. Like there's the additional excitement of like, is it going to work? It's like you're not just very good at this, but it might still not work. Like you
Yeah.
may execute very well, but it still doesn't play out. So there's that additional excitement.
Yeah, and I also, especially when it's, from the 70s or 80s and stuff, and you see the things that they pulled off to make it work, and it looks
Oh
better than
yeah.
the stuff now, whether it's Star Wars CGI or Jordan Mechner, I think on Twitter recently was posting. some of the rotoscoping videos that he took of
Oh
his
yeah,
brother doing the jumps and all that stuff. And it's just,
yeah, yeah,
I can't believe even wouldn't know how to do that today. It's amazing that that was possible.
yeah. It's very clever. The Stripe Press version of the book has that in
Okay,
it as well. They did a very good job of getting all that into the book.
cool.
Um, yeah, it's very impressively kind of hacked together.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask also about I know we got to meet up, which means that you're in America right now. So what have you been up to these last couple months?
Oh, it's been fantastic. I mean, the context. I don't know how much I've discussed this on the podcast, but the context of the trip is just that we live in the middle of nowhere, and that's nice in many ways. But
Yeah.
it's also we just need a kind of civilization fix occasionally. And the framing for the trip was like, how can we in 3 months in the US give the kids like as a baseline, like just a an experience of the present,
Mhm.
but ideally also a hint of like what is in the future, just as an antidote to living in rural Australia, around farmers and so on.
Yeah.
So highlights so far have been like taking a Waymo, just like an out of body experience. I mean, the kids liked it too, but for me, it was just so surreal. Have you taken a Waymo yet?
Well, I worked at cruise, so I took a cruise.
Yeah, but I mean,
Well, I haven't
have
taken
you
away.
taken a
I mean,
Waymo? Have you taken a
no
Waymo?
comment. No
Was
comment.
was the how are the cruise rides? Is that also
It
no
was it
comment?
was crazy. So I did mine maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. I did many with the driver, but this was with the driverless, and it was a late night pickup. I was with my boss, and I brought my guitar, and I had this idea. I was like, I'm gonna record and sing a song in the back of this thing. And we got in,
Uh-huh.
like I kind of forgot the guitar was with me for a while, just because it was
Okay.
so cool. And then 30 seconds passed, and I was sort of like, oh, okay, this is great. And I sort of just
Yeah,
moved
yeah.
on mentally from the idea that it was making left turns, even though left turns are obviously notoriously tricky. And then I recorded a song in the back, and we got out, and I don't know, I just sort of felt like it was amazing, but I was also ready, maybe because I was working there, I was ready to accept that this was something that I could see how this would be amazing and better.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have had that reaction of like it feels normal very
Yeah,
quickly, um, which is great as well. I mean, obviously, we all want this to feel normal, so that it becomes commonplace. But for me, like the first maybe three rides, full rides, it's just very emotional
really.
experiences. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Particularly the first, like I was really dumbstruck, just because I know how much engineering effort went into it, and they nailed it. Like it is, I mean, at least my experience of it was perfect, absolutely perfect.
What
Definitely better than,
you were in San Francisco, where did you
yeah,
go? What time of day? I'm curious the condition.
yeah. I mean, it was just like the middle of the day on the
Yeah.
weekends, long trip, but we did lots of trips. Actually, at one point, tried to get it to go down Lombard Street. So you can put multiple stops, and I put one
Yeah.
at the very top and one at the very bottom.
Yeah.
I decided to like not quite do that, but yeah, I like tried to push its edge case handling, and it
Yeah.
is so good. It is so
That's
good.
cool.
It is like appropriately cautious or aggressive. Like
Yeah.
you do things like you come into a four-way stop. It's very common in San Francisco. Like everyone stops at the same time. There's a little bit of human, like there's humanity. You can't like define these rules to be like first person who gets into the intersection goes first. Because if you're too strict about that, there's going to be an accident. Like generally, when two people appear to show up around about the same time, there's a little bit of what, like hesitantly enter the intersection and
Nudging.
see
Yeah,
how the other
you
person responds.
slightly break the law a little bit, like no creep forward and assert yourself
Griff,
or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, and you see how they respond. You don't deadlock, which is like if both of them are being too cautious deterministically, you're going to get a deadlock, right? It's like neither thread progresses. And you don't just like obliviously go in because that could cause an accident. You're kind of rolling through a little bit and seeing how the other person reacts. That's exactly what Waymo does.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? But that and 1,000, 10,000 other things. Like you cannot possibly driving in San Francisco is too complex to do deterministic programming. So somehow their system handles all of these edge cases through a combination of deterministic boundaries, but also
Yeah.
machine learning algorithms, and just like maybe 10 million engineering hours of effort.
Yeah.
Like it is just knowing that they started with something that felt like it worked, like that, won the, what was it, the DARPA Grand Prize for
Like
something.
2004 or whenever those were. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like after that, the number of very, very good people working diligently with the belief that it's going to work out. By the way, when a lot of people were expecting them to fail or wanting them to fail,
Yeah.
and to succeed flawlessly, like everything about the experience is fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, and now, last I heard, they're doing something like 10 million driverless miles per week.
Yeah.
And that's despite having only just gone off the wait list in San Francisco and not being available in most major cities. I mean, basically not being available anywhere. So
Yeah,
just, yeah, just a
I think I saw
fantastic.
today there's something about maybe starting on the freeways finally, and you can get that airport
Oh
ride,
yeah,
which would just be
yeah,
unreal.
yeah, yeah. They've been petitioning because they're running in SF and in parts of South Bay. I think they've
Yeah.
been petitioning to like bridge the gap between that.
Well, the way you're describing it, it's like what's an equivalent endeavor on this front? Like Manhattan Project or Apollo Project? Yeah.
That was the second big thing that stuck
Yeah.
out in this holiday. We went to the Kennedy Space Center,
Okay.
and I mean, I don't want to like ruin it for people, but you got to go to the Kennedy Space Center. It's like it's a pilgrimage, I think, for anyone who's scientifically minded, and like read up on some of the projects, like at least the Apollo missions, but ideally, actually a very good book for this that I read, like to psych myself up, um, for Cape Canaveral was Gene Kranz's book, Failure is Not an Option. You would love it, actually.
Okay. Cool.
Um, it's it's more like systems engineering. He was the flight controller. He was one of the flight controllers for the Mercury missions, which is like the first spaceflight missions for those who don't know. Gemini, which kind of built their capabilities subsequently, and then also Apollo. So like he takes you through the full sequence of like the US is going into space flight
Yeah.
through the moon landings, and stops before the kind of shuttle era. Um, but again, knowing the amount of engineering effort that went into this thing,
Yeah.
and then standing underneath a Saturn V rocket,
Oh man.
just an absolutely massive, complex. I mean, they're like, this is the most complex piece of machinery ever made by people ever. And it's like, made in the late 60s, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and like until riding in a Waymo, I was like kind of walking around with the assumption that we'd forgotten how to do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like we can build complex things, but only as an accident, only as like microservices. You know what I mean? It's not like an organized
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
effort to build this thing. Particularly the combination of software and hardware, where like there's just an extra degree of complexity that you need to handle when you're operating in the real world.
Yeah.
Driving around the streets of San Francisco, you can't skirt around that with elegant programming, or refactoring, or whatever that you can get away with in software systems. Um, yeah,
So
I was just
this
like
this
so
reminds
just
me, it just reminds me of the Bell Labs convo, the sort of like how much of the need for a benevolent monopolist is there, or like natural monopolist to facilitate this stuff. So you got like either the US government sponsoring it or Bell Labs being able to do all this basic research and things like that. It feels a little bit, I mean, maybe Google has monopolist tone, certainly with the ruling recently, but um, is that required to do that sort of 10, 20-year project? Is that why it's so hard? Because you have to have the perfect conditions to sort of get through it for 20 years?
well, the space program was not very well.
Okay.
It was not. the US was not successful in that era of spaceflight due to funding, is my
Yeah.
understanding. Because particularly at the very beginning, there was very little funding. Like it was a pretty scrappy effort.
Yeah.
Um, I'm speaking relative to other like grand projects that you could
Yeah.
imagine, like the California Rail, like the disastrous California Rail
Mhm.
project. That's a much larger budget and delivering much less, and so there's a lot more that's going on. The other thing is that, like, I don't know, this is a controversial thing in spaceflight circles, which I'm only starting to understand, but there was the Kennedy era enthusiasm for spaceflight that led to things like even into Nixon's presidency, things like the Apollo mission, but then a feeling of just like relative disinterest, despite the budget mostly still being there. I mean, it was cut back a little bit, and
Yeah.
they even cut a few of the Apollo missions. But like, there was just a loss in ambition, particularly in space exploration.
Yeah.
So we had the shuttles. I say we as if I had anything to do with it.
You're
I
part
mean,
of the human
globally,
race.
we. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, there
Yeah.
was a feeling of that
Yeah.
as part of these missions as well. Actually, one small step for
Oh, I mean,
mankind, so.
any Carl Sagan quote. Like, how many times have I just watched any clip where he's he's the narrator? I'm like, hell yeah, we're going, baby.
Yeah, we're all stardust.
Yeah.
Yeah, the drop in ambition subsequently is disappointing, and that's I think that is mostly orthogonal to funding. Although obviously, if at a federal level there isn't enthusiasm, like if the president's not excited about it, um, if people generally aren't as excited about it, that's going to lead to probably less funding. But NASA's pretty well funded beyond like what it's achieving right now.
Yeah.
And there are other organizations that are achieving a lot more in space flight
Yeah.
that now appear to have some funding, but really made their breakthroughs through belief and good engineering rather than funding. Right, like the story of SpaceX is not that it had monopoly, like it
Yeah.
had kind of a delusion, really.
Mhm.
It's hard to see that in retrospect, but at the time, uh, there was very little belief that they could achieve what they were trying to do. Um, they didn't have the funding. So it's unclear.
So,
I mean, it does seem to help, particularly
yeah.
in Bell Labs' case with the diversity of achievement,
Yeah.
because they could just be like, well, do you have a PhD in any topic that is any way related to what we're doing? Okay, we will pay you twice as much as your next offer.
And
It
just
was
do it
like
here.
basically the same. Yeah, and then just do it here. And so of course you're going to end up with 8 or 10 or whatever it was Nobel Prize winners
Yeah.
there and invent satellites and transistors and so and even Google can't do that, right? They can't like hire every relevant PhD.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhat because the kind of environment, the graduate research environment has changed a lot as well, but also because there are lots of competitors to Google in terms of employers. Um, but then also, you speak to people who were at Google Brain as it was
Mhm.
being formed or a few years in, and I don't know, like there are cultural things I can't put my finger on that also like there are parts of Google right now that are firing, that are doing very well, that have a lot of self-belief and that are doing amazing stuff. And there are other parts of Google where they just don't think that they're going to win.
Oh, yeah.
Like they're just like the internally they're going through the motions, but people are like assuming there are layoffs coming or just like yeah, it's there's a lot of cultural heterogeneity at Google right now.
Well,
So,
that's sort of why I was thinking like the natural monopolist, where you have this bulwark against, the, economy or whatever's happening, to allow yourself the space to like be thinking creatively.
yeah, I don't know, but then why do you get the diversity? Like why are some parts of the organizations? I mean, another one, again, this is also preparing for part of my trip. I finally read the Skunkworks book. Have you read that?
No, no. What company is that? I'm saying Boeing, but it's not Boeing. What's the
Lockheed
Lockheed? Yeah.
Martin.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so this is the story of like the SR-71, like the Blackbird, and some similar like Lockheed. I mean, they came out of a subset of Lockheed. It's the key thing. Like it was the
Yeah.
Skunkworks team at Lockheed, and um, firstly, Lockheed is not a monopolist by any stretch of the imagination, and like even if it was, we're talking about like a subset of that organization that is
But had
delivering.
I mean, I haven't read the book, but hadn't they locked in large government contracts that and potentially they were the only one able to fulfill, or is my interpretation wrong?
Well, I mean, locked in, not in the way that, I mean, they were in in their really active period, they were doing a lot of projects in quick succession.
Mm,
So, like they were building aircraft that suited the conditions of the time, and those were rapidly changing. Because it was like a more hostile kind of geopolitical context.
mhm.
And so, sure, you get a contract, but it's for some number of aircraft, and then your next business is going to be a new contract,
Yeah.
and this one really has to work out. So sometimes, like they would produce something that didn't meet their own standards, and they would take a loss on that contract,
Mm,
expecting that like that would put them in better stead for the subsequent one. It wasn't the kind of behavior of the monopolists. Uh, they didn't feel like they could just mail it in and
okay.
like deliver subpar aircraft and like still get paid. That may be closer to the Lockheed of today,
Mm,
which is a very different look, and to the Boeing of today.
right. Do you have I do need to read that book, but is it like skunk works in the right conditions can work, or should more companies have skunk works? What's the takeaway
I
from that
mean,
outside of entertainment value?
his argument is that the Skunkworks model should be tried elsewhere
Yeah.
as well. And uh, I mean, my sense is that yes, that model is underrated, but also there are a lot of situations where companies are trying to set up a division like this that has relative autonomy, and um, and Google's a pretty good example of that. Like, it's not like the leaders of these companies don't realize that there is a Bell Labs or a Skunkworks. I should say there was a Bell Labs of the time and a Skunkworks of the time, and so on. They're very different organizations, or a Xerox PARC or whatever. They are very actively trying to emulate these organizations in their heyday, and the Waymo experience stood out because
Cool.
like they they pulled it. I mean, I have no idea the internal dynamics, but they pulled it off. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Um, but yeah, I've been telling everyone to go. I mean, it'll be available everywhere soon enough. But if you want to experience the future in a way,
I got to give them
it's
a
no
try.
longer.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
will.
I mean, you've got no excuse really.
I know I don't. I will. Maybe I'll do
But
that.
for other people in the States, have been saying just like get out to San Francisco or Phoenix. I think SF and Phoenix are both off wait list. I think in LA there's still a wait list.
Yeah.
It's not that long. So,
Uh, did you see any rocket launches or rockets being prepared for launch when you were there?
yeah, we'd like tried to time it with a SpaceX launch and it got scrubbed at the last minute. Um, but um, but it's all right. We spent 2 full days at the Kennedy Space Center, which I'll tell you, I was not expecting with 2 young kids that they would be enthusiastic enough to go back a second time
Yeah.
and
You're like,
uh,
please, please,
and a
please.
second full day.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even like bribing them with ice cream the whole time.
Okay. Wow.
It was just a very, very cool experience.
Okay.
Um, yeah, yeah, you should do it. Everyone was asking me like because you know you meet someone, they're like, "What are you doing? You're traveling, whatever. You don't sound like the rest of us." what are you doing here? I say we're going to Florida. They're like, are you going to the
Disney
parks,
World.
right?
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
I've heard is a Disney thing. And I'm like, what is that? No, the kids don't know about that. Don't don't tell them. Uh, but Kennedy Space Center is super exciting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, definitely the like if you feel like you're in the mood for a pilgrimage, I would, read a book or two
Yeah.
on
Yeah, I would love to do
that
that. I went
period.
to, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I went to Houston thinking I was going to Austin. My buddy's like, come hang out with me for a week. I was like, oh, Houston, it's gonna great live music town or whatever. And we got there. I was like, oh, this is not Austin. So we were looking for things to do, and we went
Okay,
to Houston Space Center. I don't know if it has a different name, but that was
okay,
also, it was amazing because that's where, when Houston, I have a problem. This was before I'd
yeah,
become
yeah,
old computer obsession. So you can peer down into the rooms and see all the blinking lights and computers and stuff. And I think they had a Saturn V rocket just on the ground, laying down on the ground, and you got to walk the length of it, and it was
oh
just
yeah,
truly
fantastic.
insane.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this country where if you think about the kind of periods of early achievement. I mean, we also went to some of the Smithsonian museums
Yeah.
and also like tried to psych the girls up about that as well.
Dinosaur
Um,
bones. Yeah.
eh, Dinosaur bones. Yeah, I mean, the dinosaur bones are very easy with kids, but
Yeah.
like taking them to see the Wright Flyer and like having them leave with the feeling that people made this.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have planes, and people made this. And even thinking about things like looking at the structure of the flyer and seeing like what they recognize from a bike and putting them in the mindset of someone who is fixing bikes and believing that they could fly, like could achieve powered flight for the first time.
Yeah.
Uh, is a kind of ridiculous thing to think about. Like that is, far more than Saturn V or Waymo. They really did come across as lunatics. Like
Yeah.
there were very few people who believed that powered flight was possible at the time. But then reading about them as well, which, by the way, like I set myself the rule of if I'm going to see a major artifact like this, I definitely want to spend
Book.
10 times as much time reading about it first
Yeah.
before I see it, because like since I've done that, it's been such a much more substantial experience for me. Anyway, reading about the process of iterating towards the flyer, it's like it's real engineering. It's engineering with confidence, but solving engineering problems, like the kind of things that we have to do, where like this didn't work, but there must be a way, and like I need to build a tool to build a tool.
Yeah.
It's like we aren't like there's a point when they were doing their testing that they realized that the published numbers that they could find on for aerodynamics were wrong, and so they had to figure out kind of like the basic science of a flight for themselves, and so they built a wind tunnel
Wow.
and like a system for testing wing shape for that. Um, it's so that they could do that, right? It's like you have a problem, you have a solution, or like the engine that they put into the flyer, they built themselves.
Yeah.
They called around, it would have been great if there existed an engine that was light enough with the power output that they wanted, but there wasn't. And so they built one. And like it didn't work at first, and they iterated and made it work. Whereas today, like you call yourself a software engineer and there isn't an open source library available immediately, and you're like, oh no,
Ouch. Ouch.
this is this
Jeez.
is this
Yeah.
is just impossible, right? I can't npm install this. Like the expectation that you're just like you're an engineer even though you're just cobbling things together.
You expect me to
Um,
left pad this without a package?
yeah.
Uh, what's the book that you read for the Wright brothers? Do you
Oh,
know?
it's by McCulloch. I think it's just called The Wright
Oh,
Brothers, and
McCulloch.
it's
Okay.
guy.
Yeah, even I don't know much about them. I convinced Tavi, my daughter, to not convinced her, but just chatting with her about stuff. And she the other day was like, Wilbur and Orville Wright. And she just said it out of the blue. I was like, okay, yeah, maybe it's sticking.
Nice. Yeah, something sticking.
But my impression, even as you're describing it, my sort of popular impression just ambiently is I they sound like way more focused on this than I would have expected. I sort of have this vision of them like putting this together in their barn as like a side project and then just like jumping off hills and things like that. But that is not at all what you're describing.
No, it's very methodical. And
Yeah,
one of their strategic choices was to master gliding before doing anything powered.
yeah,
So they did like, yeah, again, it's a good lesson for engineers because the other people who were active in powered flight at the time were coming up with these massive, actually, one of the main ones publicly funded because it was Smithsonian
mm,
funded um, projects that took a long time to put together, were huge, would have an experimental flight and immediately fail, like catastrophically. And it's like all this, we learned nothing from this other than the grand idea that we had didn't work for a reason that we can't identify.
yeah.
That was like
Yikes.
the that was the typical way of doing it. For them, it's like um, they flew a kite, right? Like they designed a kite and they flew it, and it seemed to like prove a principle that they had, and so they made a bigger one and flew it as a glider. And you know, the it's funny. We went through North Carolina, and North Carolina is all about their involvement
Yeah,
in
yeah.
like the
It's
license
on the
plates or like
license
the
plate.
place.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but this the story of that is that the Wright brothers were in Dayton, Ohio. Like Dayton, Ohio gets to claim the Wright brothers. They did everything of substance there. But when it was time to find a place to practice gliding, not powered flight, but gliding, they sent around letters looking for somewhere that was barren and windy enough. Like it had the consistent winds, but also no trees and shrubs and stuff,
Yeah,
so that they
yeah.
could like have safe landings. And it just happened to be Kittyhawk. And so they
Crazy.
took their glider there to fly it. Anyway, so they nailed flight through iteration, right? They would go there, they'd set up camp in this kind of remote part of North Carolina, and like they physically built their camp, and they achieved some level of testing of like you call it an alpha glider or something, and then go back, keep selling bikes to make money,
Yeah.
do the next iteration. And they did that for like 4 years very consistently, working hard at it as engineers, like very clearly, this didn't work. Now let's make that work. I
Wow.
mean, yeah.
And were they all made out of wood or
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
the ribs, the frame was made out of wood,
yeah, yeah.
and the wings were like canvas, and or maybe not canvas, but like a similar cottonish fabric.
And were
Um,
they constructing them themselves too? So in addition to all
yeah,
this,
yeah,
yeah, that's incredible.
yeah. A lot of it was like, yeah, I mean, they had to very intimately know the machine because like until like it was still a prototype for a very long time. Like it was a while before they got someone other than the two of them to be able to fly it. So they had to understand the machine very well to be able to even control it.
And
It was a process of
why is there not a Wright company these days? There's Ford Motor Company or whatever. What happened to
um,
spoiler alert?
yeah, I don't. Yeah, so Wilbur died pretty young, and Orville continued the company, but I mean, it's just another thing I think to make a massive, or to make like a multi-generational company. So eventually, like Orville kind of sold the company and did more like experimental tinkering stuff himself, but really the two of them were a very good team. um, like quite evidently, like they just were extremely close. Like obviously lived together, worked together, but also like shared a bank account and that kind of
Wow.
thing.
Yeah.
And so they had a working relationship that was very strong, and they had a kind of early engineering, like solve the problem ethos that was very strong. And they managed to push that all the way through to convince the world that this is how we fly planes. This is what a plane is. This works. Other
Yeah.
people's approaches don't work. And sell enough of the planes and licenses that allowed them to be wealthy and set up their family.
Yeah.
Um, but creating a multi-generational company is
Yeah.
another kind of thing.
What's the Kittyhawk site? Did you go see it? And can you like,
No,
fly
I
the
was I
planes or
was
anything?
I was
Okay.
trying to I was trying to encourage my wife to go and see it, and we were like, "Well, is it just going to be windy and empty?" And it's like, "Yeah, that is really what it was."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I kind of want to go to Dayton, Ohio now because, like, I knew zero about Dayton before then, but it turns out that at the time it was just like a hub of engineering. There are lots of companies. There's lots of manufacturing.
Mhm.
Um, and there's just a kind of expectation as a kid that you could build stuff. Like the Wright brothers grew up in the culture of like these people are building stuff. There wasn't a factory there
Totally.
before. Now there's a factory, and they're making things, and we could also make things. And I mean, I doubt much of that like is still in Dayton, but
Yeah.
to go and get a glimpse of it would be nice.
Growing up, I really thought being an inventor was like a profession that you could just, oh, I'm just going to be an inventor, like a
Yeah.
scientist like that. And I suppose you could, but that seems to have faded. I guess to that end, I know some of this trip is motivated by inspiring the girls and whatnot, but are you leaving this ready to tackle superconductors or anti-grav or anything like that?
I think it would be cool to work more on the world of atoms for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, I think there seems to be, at least in some circles, a shift back to that in the US, which is good to see. Um, I think we've gone through a period of software being just too easy and so drawing a lot of talent. But it seems to be that there's maybe this is just my bias, like seeing what I want to see, but some degree of disillusion with large parts of the software industry where it's like this is not what I want my life to be about, even though it's making a lot of money for my employer.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and it's not that everyone needs to go into it. And like it's challenging when you're 35 or something to be like, oh well, now I want to learn physics from scratch. Um, but yeah, I will make sure that we have in our homeschooling enough of like non-software
Good.
experience of the sciences that's an option for them.
Amazing. Well, as I got to scoot now, but it was good catching up. Let's do this
Yeah,
again.
I'm,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm glad we did this just to get back on the wagon.
exactly. All right. Well, enjoy your trips. I'm excited to hear about the next engineering marvel of the United States or Canada. I don't
You
know
too, man.
where exactly you're going, but we'll talk soon.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll have to catch up on how your new job's going to.
Yes, absolutely. All right. See you,
Cool.
buddy. Bye.
Take care.